So today we're going to be sewing the very first pattern I ever tested for Samantha Marie Design, and that is the Willow Skirt. This is hands down one of my favorite patterns. It's very easy, and all you really need is your elastic and fabric. I will link the pattern in the description, but you can also add a belt, pockets, and a ruffle. So this pattern is recommended for either woven or a more stable knit fabric. I picked up this cotton fabric from Joann's, so that's what I'm going to use for this video. So I already have my pattern printed out, and I actually printed out the largest size, and since this pattern is pretty square, I just fold my paper over on whatever size I need or whatever pattern I need to cut on. This way we're just saving paper and not having to print every single size. It's also going to tell you on the pattern if you need to cut on the dashed line or the solid line for your ruffle or for your regular skirt. Also, if you want the skirt to be a little bit shorter, you can cut it on the ruffle line as well, which is what I do. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold my pattern over to the size that I'm going to use, and then we're going to get this cut out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out my fabric, and we are going to cut this on the fold. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this over the amount that I need for my pattern. We're going to lay our pattern piece on and cut this out around the square on the fold, and we're going to do that twice because we need a piece for our front and our back skirt. I am doing the very basic one, so I won't have a ruffle or belt. Once we have our front and back skirt, we're going to lay one piece right side up and then our other piece right on top, right side down, and we are going to serge down both side seams. I recommend using pins or clips for this because unlike knit fabric, these fabrics are slippery and don't stay together as well as knit does. Now after we have sewn both of our side seams closed, now what we're going to do is finish the edges on the top and the bottom of the skirt. So we're just going to put this on our serger and serge all the way around so that we now have something on both the top and bottom edges. I really recommend doing this because it just gives it a nicer finish, and we will have to hem the bottom of our skirt. So rather than there just being a raw edge there, it gives it a more professional finish if it has a serged edge as opposed to just being hemmed with a raw edge. Once we have both of our edges serged and finished, now we're going to do the elastic casing. So you're going to fold this top part down 3 1/4 inches and we're going to pin it. So we're going to do this with our skirt inside out, and you're going to fold the top over so that you can see the right side and just pin this all the way around your skirt. After you have that done, now we're going to measure from that top folded edge 1 1/2 inches. So we're going to pin all the way around 1 1/2 inches from that top fold. Try to get your measurements as precise as you can because this is going to create our elastic casing, and we want to make sure our elastic goes through nice and smooth. So after you have one side of your skirt done, flip it over and do this same thing on the back. Now we're going to go over to our sewing machine, and I'm going to use my longest straight stitch, and I'm going to straight stitch all the way around my skirt at my first set of pins, which is our 1 1/2 inch measurement. Now this is going to be the top row for our elastic casing, so you can go ahead and close this one all the way around. You do not have to leave a gap for this top row of stitches. A tip that you can use to make sure you're sewing your stitches straight is to use the lines on your sewing machine instead of looking at your needle, and that will make your stitches a little straighter. Again, for this top row of stitches, you can close this, but for our second row of stitches down here, we are going to leave an inch gap to fit our elastic through. So now what we're going to do is measure 1 1/2 inches from the previous top stitch that we just made, and we're going to stitch all the way around, leaving that opening for our elastic. So after we have that row of top stitches complete, now we're going to measure our 1 inch elastic and cut it at whatever length you need for your pattern. After we have that cut, I stretch it a little bit and then I add a safety pin to one end, and that is the end that I am going to use to feed my elastic through the casing on our skirt. Make sure you put a pin or a clip on the other end of your elastic so that you don't accidentally pull that end inside your casing. And you're just going to slide this through and pinch and pull until your elastic comes out the other side. Once your elastic comes through the other side, we're going to remove our safety pin and overlap the ends of our elastic, and I'm going to put a pin here, and now we're going to close our elastic. So I'm going to use my sewing machine for this. I use my zigzag stitch and just make sure we close the ends of the elastic completely. Now we're just going to slide our elastic in and adjust the top of our skirt so that our elastic is completely inside our fabric so that we can now top stitch that opening closed. So now I'm going to take this back over to my sewing machine, and I'm just going to use the same top stitches that I did before, and I'm going to close that opening that we fed our elastic through. To make it a little bit easier, I do stretch my elastic open so that I can see my stitches and make sure that I'm getting the entirety of that opening closed. Once we have that all finished, now what we're going to do is hem around the bottom of our skirt. Now, depending on how short you want your skirt to be, you can hem this whatever length you'd like, but I do what the pattern calls for, which is 3/4 of an inch, and we're just going to top stitch that down all the way around our skirt. Since we're doing the basic version in this video, this is your last step, is hemming the bottom of this skirt, and after that you'll be finished. Thank you so much for watching my video, and if you could, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments.